Honorable Teddy.
Chair, I have a problem with that approach because we want to do justice to the report and the financial statements here. And if we were to spend time talking about issues that are supposed to be handled in the meeting that we have already agreed upon next week, I have a problem. I'll appreciate a situation where we concentrate on the issues at hand. Because like I'm saying, we can't spend a lot of time talking about the very same issues that we are going to be dealing with next week. We want to do justice to this report and the financial statements.
Let me just correct something. With what is in front of us now, with the presentation that Eskom has given us, some of the questions that have been raised here are questions that are coming from the presentation. I just want you to relax and give this meeting its due integrity, so that we deal with the issues. What we are going to deal with is when the Treasury is here to answer some of the questions, we will deal with that. Even if Eskom give us negative answers today, or they're not doing justice to what towards answering us, we will give them time next week, or let me say in next week's meeting, when the Treasury is with us. Let us relax and give them time and speak to them. If CEO, do you want to say something?
Yes. Okay. I've raised order, Chair.
You raise order?
Yes.
Oh, okay, comrade. You, Honorable Khawla and Honorable Mazon and Honorable Singh, before you say, oh.
Chair, my point of order is that I think you have provided a way forward in terms of how we must proceed. Eskom is a state-owned enterprise. It has a responsibility to ensure that it wins the confidence of the society. We're doing this so that we can ensure that we can have confidence to Eskom. So all the issues that we want to ask that relate to Eskom on any matter, we should be given an opportunity to raise them, so that all of us, when we march out of here, we can say that we've got confidence of Eskom. So no one should impose himself as a shop steward of Eskom. Eskom is here, and they have not indicated any uncomfortability to answer the questions of this committee.
Point of order,
Shop stewards here. Thanks, Chair.
We don't have shop steward, for sure. We don't have shop steward in this committee. We have members of parliament.
The way he's wearing is like a shop steward. He's a laborer.
Honorable Mazon.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chairperson, just for the record, this what the Honourable Mania referred to was reports that began in July 2015. Two of the reports are covered in the financial year as presented to us by Eskom, and he is perfectly in his right to question them in light of the presentation that we received this morning. Chairperson, I do have myself some questions that I would like clarity on. Chairperson, firstly,
Honorable Mazon,
yes.
Can we deal with this matter? Then you come with your questions thereafter, because we had a matter that just has been raised by members. I want to deal. I think Honorable Singh is still on the matter. I want him to deal with it, not with the question. When you'll carry on with your own questions.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that intervention. Chair, I think there was a point of order raised. You correctly responded to the point of order. We respect your ruling, and I think it's important for us, whether we are in the House or here, to always respect the ruling of the Chair. And if we are not happy with it, the rules provide for us to take it elsewhere and complain about the Chair or even the Speaker. So we respect your ruling, and I'm glad that you are allowing us to proceed in the manner we are. And your ruling is quite correct that if Eskom feel uncomfortable to answer some of the questions, or they don't have sufficient answers, then we have another opportunity. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier, that it would have been important for Treasury and people from the Office of the Auditor General to be here. But be that as it may, we respect your ruling, and I think we should proceed. Thank you, Chair.
In respect of my ruling, The CEO of Eskom has raised his hand. I think he wanted also a bite on the issues that have been raised by the member. Can we give him just a minute, a second for that?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to confirm that we also think that the matters that are being raised are public interest matters, and that if the honourable members would like answers to these questions, we are ready to answer the questions, and we, in fact, would pray that we are allowed to respond to these questions, all of them.
Thank you, CEO. Let's carry on. Honourable Mazon.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I'm very pleased to hear about this open attitude from Eskom today. Chairperson, Cabinet and the Department of Energy, as well as the President himself in SONA, gave assurance to the country that IPPs would be introduced and integrated very much as part of our electrification program going forward, as well as making sure that our economy retained a sustainable energy supply. A very different picture has been painted by recent utterances by Group CEO, Mr. Brian Molefe, with regards to IPP deals. In actual fact, Eskom has refused point blank to sign IPP deals. So if we could just have an explanation as to where this complete differentiation from what we see today, what we've read in the news, and what we know has been approved by Cabinet, Energy and SONA, where that comes from. Chairperson, then my leading on to this, it is rather worrying, Chair, that certain aspects of basic law and the way we do business in Parliament and conduct business in government are not being adhered to. And I say this in terms of Eskom's lack of gazetting provincially as well as nationally with regards to nuclear sites. Notice periods were incredibly short. Chair, we've heard today how much excess electricity we have on the grid. So, what is this rush towards this nuclear site approval without it being correctly gazetted? And the rush it's simply beyond me, and I'd like an explanation as to that. Chair, the cost overruns at Irregular cannot be ignored. Especially in light of recent media releases. I think Irregular is one of the many elephants in this room. I think we should agree that we have a herd of elephants in this room. The cost overruns are unacceptable. They are incredibly worrying. We would like to know from our side, certainly, what has caused these overruns. Was it due to specific contractors? And if so, what kind of penalties are going to be enforced? Because the South African public are those that suffer due to this enormous overrun at Irregular. Chair, talking about Irregular, we've read that Unit 3 at Irregular was damaged. We'd like to know what was the cause of the damage. Again, was it contractor error? Was it operation error? We need to know these kind of things. Chairperson, then with regards to Koeberg, we learned that there were suspensions of managers at Koeberg. Now, Koeberg is a nuclear reactor, of course, has to be handled with the utmost care. We would like to know, are there any possible danger areas caused by the suspension of these managers? And we'd like an update as to the suspension of the managers and what particularly what stands there at present. Chairperson, there seems to be a miraculous increase in energy supply in our country. And while we are very grateful that we have no load shedding, one must also slightly be concerned as to what has caused this miraculous increase in energy supply, because simply the additional energy that's been added to the grid by those that are added to the grid through Irregular and Medupi still don't answer the miraculous increase. So could Eskom please explain to us how many companies have actually pulled out their supply requirement from the grid, resulting in this extra freeing up of capacity? Chairperson, very pleased to see that profit increased dramatically, and I think the word dramatically is an understatement, at Eskom. Chair, the cost-cutting measures at Eskom seem to have worked, and I'm very pleased about that. What I'm not so pleased about is the fact that massive bonuses were paid out. at a time in which our country is in an economic slump. South Africans are suffering more than ever. More South Africans remain jobless than ever. And I think that when a company such as Eskom, that has gone through the financial crisis it has gone through, has caused, been a large contributor to the causing of an economic downturn in our country, I think it's a cold slap in the face of all South Africans to have massive bonuses being paid out at Eskom. And I'd like an explanation as to why these bonuses were paid out, and to touch on what Honourable Singh said, especially considering the Auditor General pointed out as one of the highlights of concern was the leadership at Eskom being a problem. But still they found it correct to pay themselves massive bonuses and ask for increases. Let's not talk about the massive salaries that they earn every month. Chairperson, to touch on what Honourable Mania said, Lynn Brown made a very interesting statement, and I think a very profound statement, on Talk Radio 702 yesterday when interviewed about the Teta contracts and the coal contracts. And she said that she would ensure that Eskom made available to Treasury the coal contracts. Chairperson, what was even more astounding was perhaps spokesperson Paiswa said that a driver was in fact dispatched with the documents, taking the documents to Treasury. So I think Honourable Mania said he would like confirmation that the driver arrived at Treasury with the documents.
So,
Further to that,
Chair, it's Pasiwe, not
Pasiwe. Excuse me. Thank you very much.
Pasiwe.
Thank you very much for that correction, Pasiwe. So we'd like to know if spokesperson Pasiwe was correct that the driver had arrived at Treasury with the contracts. And second to that, Chairperson, when we can expect the driver to arrive at Parliament with those contracts, because I think we're all looking forward to reading them.
Honourable Mazon.
Yes, Chairperson.
I think you don't have to repeat what Honourable Mainir has said.
I'm not repeating what Honourable Mainir said.
He has explained it in such a way that Eskom should give us answers on all those things that you have said.
Right, thank you very much, Chairperson, but I think you'll see what I've said is we'd also like those documents, so it's not a repeat of what Honourable Mania has said. Chairperson, I'd also like an assurance from Eskom regarding the coal quality that we have at the moment. I think much has been said about the quality of coal as well as the cost of coal that is being supplied to Eskom. I think just an assurance to the South African public at large that we have a sustainable coal supply, that we have the correct grade of coal. And Chair, while we're talking about that, can we also just discuss how much of our good grade coal is being exported and how closely monitored the exporting of the coal is being monitored? Chair, and I think I'll leave that for now and then take a second round next time.
Honourable Nopan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is on page 27, where the initiatives are in place to prevent reduction of irregular expenditure. I wanted to check with Eskom. I see on this page 27 there are a lot of checks, meaning they've completed or implemented those initiatives. What I want to know is there a way, or do they have other means of ensuring that after educating those employers, say for instance on the PFMA and stuff, and you find that they have not done what they were taught or whatever measures were placed there, are there any consequence management on these? The other one is on the municipal debt. I want to know what are other steps taken to ensure that municipalities pay, because from what we've heard is that municipalities are paying, but still there's this debt that it seems to be growing every day. The other one is on the wage negotiations. We've heard that there've been strikes at Eskom from last week. If you can give us an update on those wage negotiations with unions. Thank you.
Honourable Khawula.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I will try not to repeat what has been raised. But perhaps let me start with the socio-economic, as you have alluded, and obviously appreciate your drive towards electrifying houses. But my concern, the reason why I'm repeating that one, my concern is a huge outcry in terms of the rising of electricity cost, especially to the poor. And I want you to explain, because amongst many things that people are alleging is that perhaps this rise of electricity cost to the poor is the over-subsidy to companies, and for you to compensate yourself from that subsidy, that cost is actually felt by the most vulnerable in the society. I want you to comment on that. And also the possibility of awarding free electricity, mostly to your indigenous people, you see, as part of curbing the cost. Following that point is the issue of alternative energy supply, especially for residences. I understand that there's been a huge discussion regarding your green energy and other sources of energy as to whether, how are the chances for us to ultimately migrate from the coal source energy to green energy, so that we can make sure that we alleviate the cost of electricity. The other point that I want to raise, I believe in 2014, there was an allegation that there were staff members that were pressured to take voluntary severance packages for Telkom to recover from its financial instability. And I see from the report, in terms of your HR performance, you have indicated the increase of staff complement. I just want to check that and obviously link it to the point of on the issue of the wage strike that you are having, so that we get a clear balance as to exactly whether Eskom is indeed increasing jobs or losing jobs. The other point that I want to raise is you, as a state-owned enterprises, you have a responsibility to dispel the notion that our state-owned enterprises is captured by the big family called Guptas. And I believe that you have that responsibility to prove that our state-owned enterprises is not captured. I understand that you could be the new administration, but the reality is that the public knows that the Guptas have had a monopoly over the businesses that were given by Eskom to many businesses. And the issue of Teta is but one of those manifestations which proves to the public that there's been a serious preferential when it comes to the Guptas. And as you respond, I want to know this prepaid arrangement towards Teta, is it a policy consistency practice of Eskom, or could it feed to the fact that there's been allegation that you have been bending backwards when it comes to Guptas? In fact, yourself, CEO, I believe, in July, you are quoted that you have defended the Guptas. And I want to check if this is going to be the feature that's going to characterize your leadership in Eskom, where you are going to go all out and defend the Guptas, where you even refer to them that you believe they have been subjected to a kangaroo court. You see, so, and I want you to balance that with the fact that you have bent backwards and you have given them preferential treatment. My last point on this one. Look, we may be ordinary people we may be representing ordinary people, but the reality is that the refusal of Eskom to submit invoices and also statements that prove the payment towards the Guptas and everything that is related to. I mean, from where I'm sitting, I saw a leadership of Eskom that is being petty. It's being petty in the sense that it is utilizing public funds, and it does not want to show how much invoices and how much it has paid, because you have made defense to say that you have audited your things, you have all those things. But the reality is that the National Treasurer, which is expected also to monitor how you run your state-owned enterprises, has a responsibility to defend your credibility in terms of how you use your funds. But if you are unable to submit reports, and even the timing of you submitting the reports now, it raises eyebrows to ordinary people. You are coming to Parliament to account on your funds, and the minister in Brown is saying to you, please give, and only now you decide to give. So from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing a leadership that is being petty, yet it is responsible to run state-owned enterprises, which is expected to generate huge revenue for our country. So I am looking forward to your response. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Sedi.
Honorable Chair, 3 issues. I will try as much as I can to not to repeat some of the issues that have been raised already by some of the honorable members. But let me start by commending Eskom for the 19.3% increase in relation to procurement from black women-owned suppliers. I see your target was 12%, and we appreciate the fact that you had increased that to 19.3%. Equally, your corporate social investment of 115.5 million is commendable. But I'll appreciate if you can just give us highlights of some of the programs that you are conducting in that particular area. The issue that has been raised earlier by one honorable member, municipal debt. I know in one of our engagements with Eskom, Chair, there's been a suggestion that we might need a session with SALC to try and deal with this particular challenge, because really it's an issue that needs to be addressed. It's a cause for concern for all of us, but maybe we need to pursue that meeting that we suggested with SALC to try and see if we can get a solution to this particular challenge. The second last one is the suspension of senior managers at the Kubet plant. I will appreciate if Eskom can highlight us and give us progress with regard to these particular issues, and obviously how these suspensions will affect the operations of the plant. The last one being the wasteful and fruitless expenditure, which amounts to 886 million. We'll as well appreciate if you can just give us an update, as well as measures that we are putting in place to try and ensure that this matter does not recur. Thank
you. Honorable Kwangwa said earlier that he would like to ask some questions, but now I'm afraid he might ask questions that have been already asked, but I will give over to him.
For now, Chairperson, you're right. I'm not going to ask questions because I wasn't here. But I do have questions to ask. I'm going to wait for them to respond to those questions, hear from the answers, whether or not some of the questions I've noted down are contained in that. But I think the people of South Africa are interested in one thing currently. Yes, they might be interested in many other things. You can see, for instance, in the ruling party that there's a scramble for the control of state-owned enterprises. Now, what we want to hear, and what my colleagues are saying here, is that tell us whether Eskom is part and parcel of that scramble for the control of state-owned enterprises, so that some of the leaders can start fiddling with the public purse for self-enrichment. That's what people want to hear. So it means that the Teta issue is of primary concern, my fellow South Africans, in your responses to our questions. I will still ask you, obviously, about financial matters later on. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, honorable members. Before I give over to Eskom, I've got a few concerns that I want to raise. Especially in the issue of municipality that we spoke about last year, and the CEO said the solution to the debts of not to have the same debts in the future from the municipalities will be a prepaid method that they will use. But I think some of the municipalities, they depend on their revenue depend on the tariffs that they are putting for the people on the ground. I just want to check if there is anything that you have done or a strategy to help those municipalities in especially those that are in rural areas in helping them to have a revenue in their municipalities, as it is said. Also, the utilization of diesel that you spoke about, that you said you have not used diesel from July. Are you intending to use it in the near future? And what is the possibility of completely not even returning to it, whether, no matter how the situation is with the Eskom? In Unit 3 at Ingula, you said there's a damage. How did it affect the synchronization to the national grid? And did this damage slightly reverse some of your gains that you have made as Eskom, as you have given us your presentation, telling us about your gains, that the developments and gains that you have made in the SOE. The last question will be on the illegal electrification. I know this might be a concern for the municipalities, or it has to do with the municipalities should take over and see that those illegal connections are not made. But my fear is that those legal connections might also affect the grid. They might be heavy to the grid. Your take to the municipality, do you engage with those municipalities? For example, here in Western Cape, here in Cape Town, there's a place called Danun. I went to that place. I saw the crisscrossing of the lines there in that area. Do you help the municipality on illegal connections, or do you leave it to them and take the pressure on the grid, on the national grid? Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'll give over to Eskom to respond. The last one is the targets that you have put yourself. There are few targets that you have not reached. Then what is your plan on reaching those targets that you have not? The one it's the unplanned capacity, human capital, training spend, and all those economic impact, the procurement spend with black-owned supplies, and all of those. Okay. I'll give over to you to respond.
Thank you, Chairperson, and to honorable members of this committee. A lot of questions have been asked. The CEO and our executives will deal with them, but I would like to just say South Africans must understand that Eskom is a wholesale supplier, except in a few cases where it supplies to the extensive users of power. The municipalities are the retail arm of the electricity supply chain. So a lot of responsibility rests with them to see to it that the money is collected and transferred to Eskom, and to see to it that there is rule of law in terms of these illegal connections. I would plead with public representatives like parliamentarians, councillors, legislators in the provinces to really spread the culture of not being destructive with state assets. Because these inyoga are very destructive to the grid, and this is a national asset. Coming to the issue of the Teta, we have given all information that National Treasury wanted. We have listed the instances and the dates. Then they came back with the 172-page document and stipulating that the answers and the reviews must be approved by board. But we have scheduled board meetings. I mean, our next scheduled board meeting is in September, 21st of September. They were forced, the CEO and his people, to wait for this meeting to happen. They were ready. Then the minister gave instruction that don't wait for the board meeting, submit this to Treasury, and it was done. So there is no attempt at all to be devious, to be uncooperative, to hide things, because there is nothing to hide. As far as confidence is concerned, I have full confidence in the CEO and the executives at Eskom. They work by the book. Decisions in the tender committee, and the chairperson of the board tender committee is here, if you want to ask him. Those decisions are vetted by independent auditors. It's a long process. When I started at Eskom, I was chairperson of the tender board. We used to meet right into the night, at times even on weekends, because of the length of the process of procurement. Getting in your auditors, getting in the paper trail. You know, it's a very watertight system. I would be surprised if today they can be able to rig that. It's just not possible. So as far as confidence is concerned, South Africans, I would like to say, you must be very thankful that you have this leadership at Eskom. It's changed people's lives. It's changed the prospects of new investments in this country because of the stability and security of supply of electricity. I was at the TICAT conference in Nairobi with the president, with the Prime Minister of Japan. Uganda, Zambia, everybody was rushing to us, saying, come and help us. We have got electricity problems in our countries. I said, fine, the Southern African Power Pool is there. The CEO attends. Let's discuss your needs, but we'll have to strengthen our own transmission systems first, our own transformers, before we can carry the extra 2,000 megawatts, for instance, that Zambia is requesting. So Eskom is on the roll. It's playing a vital role in the whole region. We are going to deliver, but we need your cooperation, because this campaign to kill trust in Eskom, to actually portray us as if we are committed or we are bought or we are captured, is nonsense. Please help us with this. The state was captured in 1948 when the nationalists came to power. We have contracts at Eskom that have lasted 40 years, which were approved by the Nationalist Party government, giving huge prepayments, billions of dollars to the Anglos, to the other companies that were mining coal, the 5 coal suppliers to Eskom, giving contracts by the Nationalist Party government. Those shareholders sitting in London all over the place have benefited on the sweat of our miners, have benefited taking money from this country because of the state capture. So please, when we talk of state capture, let us be clear what we are talking about. Eskom wants to effect transformation in this country at the fundamental level. We want to not renew the contracts that are coming to an end belonging to these 5 big companies. We want to supply small miners, small black miners, small women-owned mines, because that is our duty if we are going to carry out the NDP. And we need cooperation from you as parliamentarians and leaders in society, because it's a big challenge. We have not even started. I said at one stage they killed Netleg. Netleg was the hope in 1993. I was at Cortesa, that we would have a platform where we'll talk about transformation in this country. It was killed. It's now only talking about wage negotiations. Nobody worries about this. This was a high-level social dialogue platform. That's what it was made. Because without justice, there can be no reconciliation. And that's where justice was going to be expressed through the banks giving, new rules for credit to SMMEs, to new enterprises, building up factories in Soweto and other rural areas. All this has not happened. And yet, we get focused on why do you supply Teta. Teta is only 5% of the coal supply to Eskom. The prepayments we have made are not even in multi-millions like before. But we needed coal urgently at the time. And they said for us to open up a new SIM to supply you the extra coal you need, we need a prepayment of so much. And that was made because there were stations that were going to shut down and we have had massive load shedding. It was all well thought out. There was no funny tricks about it. And please stop believing lies being told by other people about us. Thank you.
CEO. Switch off him.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I should start with the allegation that I have defended the Guptas, that I have defended Teta, and that I have said the whole matter sounds like a kangaroo court. Chair, the objection is not really the substance of the transactions that we have done with Teta. The objection seems to be that we should not have done business with Teta at all. Nobody comes and says this transaction should not have been done because it does not benefit Eskom. Nobody says, why did you buy coal from Teta that was not delivered? The issue of the substandard coal has absolutely no basis. That coal was tested at South African Bureau of Standards. In fact, what we found was that some of our employees had classified coal to be substandard that came from Teta. We took the same samples to the South African Bureau of Standards, and the South African Bureau of Standards said there is nothing wrong with this coal, and those employees were suspended. And we do not understand why they had said the coal was substandard and the SABC found otherwise. So, to me, it sounds like the objection is just doing business with Teta or with the Guptas. Now, what I have said in the past is that not to do business with Teta would require us to blacklist them. And there is a process in the PFMA for blacklisting suppliers. And in terms of that process, we would have to inform them that we cannot do business with them and provide reasons why we would not be able to do business with them. And therein lies my problem. I do not know what the reasons are, other than gossip and innuendo. And that is why I said this thing sounds like a kangaroo court, because I have been to kangaroo courts in Limpopo when I was young. I was an activist in Limpopo. I have come to community meetings where an entire community was very angry and was about to necklace and bend down an old woman just because they said she controls lightning. And nobody could provide evidence of in what way and how she controls lightning. It sounds preposterous today, but if you read the media and the allegations against the Guptas and what they have done, it sounds like somebody is saying these people have magic, they have to leave the country. These people have done something, but we can't put a finger on it. We can't hold them in front of our judicial system. Nobody's calling them to come and give what warning statement? Precautionary statements. And as far as we know, they have not been found guilty of anything. In fact, what I then asked during the Justice Malala interview was, so Justice, what have they done? What laws have they broken? And what has been done about it? Because I just work at Eskom, and I need to be told, don't do business with them for these reasons. Nobody has come to me and given me the reasons, other than then I get labeled to be a Gupta person, just because I will not break the laws of our country, which says I cannot blacklist them without a reason. It's as simple as that. We cannot blacklist them without providing reasons. I can say that we will not do business with you because you landed your aeroplane at Waterkloof. I'm not sure if that will carry water in a court of law.
Not in Waterkloof.
I don't understand.
I said you won't carry water in Waterkloof.
I don't carry water in Waterkloof. Anyway, Chair, until we can get a reason to blacklist them, I'm afraid if they apply they bid for a transaction, if they apply to do work with us, we have to consider them like everybody else. And that is required of us by a document no less than the Constitution. That is all that I have said on the matter. I don't know if by saying so, that makes me a captured person. Perhaps I'm captured, but I'm captured by the Constitution, not by the Guptas. I'm captured by the principles of human rights, that if you're going to make an allegation, people have said, even today in this meeting, that people have been found guilty. But it looks like now people are found guilty without any evidence, and people are presumed guilty until they are proven innocent. That is not how I understand our law to work. But going back to the questions, I will ask the CFO to talk about the first question, which was 17.5 billion BPP savings, whether they are sustainable, and also the asset management and disposal of assets policy.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, indeed, the 17.5 billion rand business productivity savings, as we term it, is a requirement of the equity injection that has been approved by Cabinet. So yes, we certainly do have a program of initiatives that make up the 17.5 billion, and there is a target associated with that for the next 3 years that we need to achieve. And as you will see from the slide, we've been in a position to exceed the target for the current year. By and large, the biggest contributor to the 17.5 billion business productivity savings that we achieved was the reduced use of diesel that Brian will explain later in the questions. And as a result of the largest contributor being diesel, and the fact that we do not anticipate placing a reliance on diesel going forward, we believe that a bulk of the savings that will be captured under this business productivity initiative program will be sustainable going forward. And by and large, it's been one of the biggest contributors to us achieving the 34% growth in EBITDA for the year. In terms of the question on the asset management and disposal policy, yes, indeed, we do have quite rigorous asset management policies in terms of useful lives, in terms of residual values, in terms of even on the operation side as to when we should maintain assets, how regularly we should maintain assets, and in what manner. And also to give comfort to the committee, the assets are maintained by and large by the original equipment manufacturers. So from that perspective, the philosophy maintenance that is required is undertaken as and when required. In terms of the disposal side, yes, we do also have an asset retirement policy that we adhere to. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question was on load shedding. And I think this links to the question that Honorable Mazoni, No, it's not Mazoni. Yes, the miraculous recovery.
It's here. It's here. It's a question.
Yes, Mazoni. Sorry, I was thinking of Michael, sorry, but it's Mazoni. On the miraculous appearance of electricity. Now, I got worried that we're going to be accused of witchcraft and maybe be... Yes, and that we are witches and maybe we should be bent on the stakes, because in the last few days it certainly feels like that where did this come from, and so they must be bent at the stakes. But the truth of the matter is that, Chair, if you remember that fateful Wednesday, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, when I was called before this committee 5 days after I had been appointed at Eskom, and we were asked about 75 questions. And during the answer session, we said at the time, we need 3,000 megawatts to deal with load shedding. If we can get 3,000 megawatts, we'll be able to deal with load shedding. Well, I'm happy to report today that what has happened in the last year is that from the way that we operate our plants, extracting efficiencies from our plant, and the way that we have been able to do maintenance and catch up with backlog maintenance, we have been able to improve the energy availability factor, which is an efficiency measure, from about 69% to 78%, 79%. That in its own is an additional 3,700 megawatts that the machines are giving us by just operating them better. And that is not witchcraft. That is what we did. We have improved the EAF, and our improvements of the EAF is something that is able to be proven. In addition to that, we fast-tracked and finalized the commercial operation of Medupi Unit 6, which gave us 794 megawatts or 800 megawatts, in addition to the 3,700 megawatts from efficiencies. And in addition to that, we synchronized onto the grid. Now I must explain synchronization, because I think even Carte Blanche got it wrong. They said we are lying. They accused us of lying when they said that when the president was there, 1,000 megawatts were being put into the grid by Ingula. Synchronization means after the machine has been built, it is then connected to the grid and switched on, and it is generating electricity that goes into the grid. But the machine is still in testing phase. It has not been handed over for commercial operation. So our winter strategy involved synchronizing, not commercial operation, synchronizing all 4 units of Ingula by May. That was our strategy last year. And after synchronization, then doing all the tests that are required to hand over the machines for commercial operation. Doing those tests during peak when we need electricity, so that while the machines are being tested and they are generating electricity, that electricity is not lost, but it is used in the for our needs, especially in the evenings during peak. And I think it is something that even Carte Blanche missed, because they kept saying that we are lying, we are lying, we are lying. It's not possible that there was 999 or 1,000 megawatts on the grid on the day that the president was there. On the day that the president was there, Unit 4 was synchronized, the other was synchronized and commercially operational, and the other two units, 1 and 2, were synchronized but not commercially operational, but they were giving us the 333 megawatts. And so that was our strategy to go through winter, to go through the commercialization of units 1, 2, and 4, and even 3, at peak in winter, so that that electricity can be used. And we did this successfully, except there was one setback. In the hands of the contractor, Unit 3, during testing, was damaged. There's nothing unusual about that. It's not corruption. Unit 3 was damaged during testing. And that is why there is testing, because there's a possibility that it can fail. And Unit 3 failed. And we acknowledge that. But it happened in the hands of the contractor. There is no additional cost to Eskom. There is nothing that an Eskom employee did. The contractor has accepted that the machine has failed in their hands, and they are fixing it and bringing it back to synchronization, hopefully during the month of September. And we think that it will also be in commercial operation by the end of the financial year. And there is nothing sinister about that. It's not witchcraft.
So I just need to, Chairperson, deal with the issue of bonuses to our executives and other levels at Eskom. We do what we call performance contracting. We set out the KPIs and the key performance areas that managers, general managers, senior executive sign to. Among these is EBITDA. The CEO set up a very stiff target for EBITDA. He set up a very stiff KPI for load shedding and other KPIs. These women and men sitting here who lead Eskom performed according to those KPIs. Now, we can't change the performance contract and say, no, we are not paying you bonuses. Otherwise, they'll go. This country doesn't have enough engineers, enough artisans, highly qualified. They will go. Zambia will pick them up. Zimbabwe or Ghana will pick them up. These are key people in this country for stability of its electricity supply. We had to pay them for the work they produce. And this work meant going to all the stations in the country every Friday together with the CEO, ensuring that there's performance contracting, ensuring agreements with the people who run the power stations. It was a lot of work involved, and this is why he was able to turn it around.
In fact, Chair, our performance contract was based on two parameters, mainly. The others did not have a lot of weight, but the ones that had most weight in our performance contract, it was load shedding and restoring the profitability of the company. And I'm happy to say that as the management team of Eskom, Asinavalo, both were delivered. Chair, the next question, we've spoken about synchronization. The next question was about the usage of diesel. In fact, this is a very painful subject. Diesel was used as a last resort to avoid load shedding until recently. When I arrived at Eskom, there was the usage of diesel almost on a daily basis to avoid load shedding. Eskom has a letter that says that use diesel to avoid load shedding and it will be a pass-through. Eskom doesn't have to use its own balance sheet to do so. The money will be recovered via the tariff. So Eskom used diesel as a pass-through, and with the understanding that the money would be recovered via the tariff. When I arrived at Eskom, we were at the point where we had used the diesel and wanted to recover the money through the tariff. The regulator said, no, you can't. The consumer can't afford it. If you remember, Chair, I was at the hearings where I said, we need to use diesel to avoid load shedding, and our understanding was that it would be a pass-through. And the regulator said, no, none of our diesel costs were recoverable. And so we used the Eskom balance sheet. And when the finding was made, we did not appeal, we did not complain. We went back to the drawing board and said, well, we have to stop the use of diesel. Partly because it is not recoverable. The regulator has made it clear that it is not recoverable, because also it is expensive, and if we continue using diesel, we will simply erode our balance sheet, and that had to be stopped. And I am happy to report, Chair, that that has been successful. We have been able to stop the use of diesel without load shedding. We have also been able to avoid eroding our balance sheet through the use of diesel. We were using about 1 billion rand of diesel per month when I arrived at Eskom. In the month of July 2016, it was zero. Between 1st of April to date, we have used only 6 million rand of diesel. In fact, the only diesel that we still use is an IPP at Didisa. Now, the interesting thing about that diesel is that we have to pay that IPP for the use of diesel, even if they don't use it. And that is part of the IPP agreements that we have to sign. Chair, I will ask the CFO to talk about compliance over PFMA.
Thank you.
PFMA compliance.
Thank you, Brian. I think the question relates to from the honourable member in relation to page 12 of the annual financial statement that deals with the leadership. And I would like to give comfort to the committee that when they do speak about leadership, actually we are in the fortunate situation that it doesn't relate to any one of us sitting around the table today as it relates to leadership. But when the auditors look at this aspect, they try and identify the root cause into three categories. And the first category is leadership or people. Second category is systems and processes. And the third category is governance. So they try and categorize all of these findings into those three categories. And as it relates to the leadership finding that is currently disclosed in the annual report, it relates to the SHEC matter and the level of the individuals that were involved in the SHEC matter, which happened, as Brian had said, that covered a period from 2009 to 2012. And that is the reason why they categorize that under leadership. As you would see from the details on the slides that we presented as well as in the annual report, the alleged transgression was perpetrated by quite a senior individual within the organization. So that is why they categorize that into the leadership category of the three categories that I've mentioned.
Chair, I will ask the chairperson to talk about performance bonuses. Safe to say, he has already done so. Safe to explain that the shares that are referred to in the annual financial statements are phantom shares. So these are not real shares. This is the way that the long-term incentive scheme uses phantom shares. So they don't exist, but what would happen if we had shares. That is what happens. And that is how our LTI is calculated, on phantom shares. So it's not that we have shares in Eskom or that there has been the privatization of Eskom by stealth and the selling of Eskom to management. That does not happen.
Maybe if I can also add, Brian, in terms of the comments that have been given by chairs as well as Brian on the incentives, also to add that one of the other modifiers that we do have on the short-term incentive, and this is in line with the question that was asked by the acting chair, is that we've also have a modifier relating to shareholder compact performance. So to the extent that we have not met those targets that the chair has raised, the short-term incentive has been modified by a percentage. And as well as the long-term incentive, or the LTI, has a discretionary element that allows for modification of the long-term incentive, and that's the shares that Brian has been speaking about. And because of the perpetuation of the transgressions that we've seen on the fruitless, wasteful, as well as irregular expenditures perspective, those payments were actually modified. I'm not exactly sure of the percentage, but I think it was between 7.5% and 10%. 10%. That was modified. Thank you.
Chair, I'm going to ask the CFO.
Sorry. I thought we are going to give them a chance to respond to all the questions and make follow-up questions after that. Can we do that?
Clarity on some of the answers.
Sorry?
Clarity on some of the answers that were given. I'll ask you.
We will do that on the second round.
Thank you, Chair. Payments made in advance. Chair, I'm going to ask the CFO to talk about the idea of advance payments and how this arises, historical practice of advance payments, and to talk in detail about the Teta advance payment.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Honourable Singh, for the question. I think it was quite astute of you to pick up the page 73 prepayments of 3 billion rand odd and the classification of the other. We Chatsworth accountants. Yes, indeed. If we just deal with the direct question in terms of the 3 billion other. Now, the 3 billion other actually goes to show that prepayments are part and parcel of normal commercial transactions. The prepayments other, the biggest part of the 3 billion is actually made up of prepayments that we make on normal commercial contracts that we sign with Siemens, with Hitachi, with any of these other big suppliers, and it's part and parcel of the financing structure of those contracts. So to the extent that there is a prepayment request from the supplier, obviously that is considered, and obviously we need to take into account the time value of money associated with that, and if it's obviously a good commercial transaction, we then agree to the prepayment of those amounts. So basically that goes to the point of saying that it's a normal commercial transaction that these prepayments are undertaken. Now if we look at the historic events relating to prepayments, particularly in the coal area, this is not a thing that is also unique. Eskom has undertaken prepayments and has a policy associated with this that is historic. For example, the board approved advance payments to the value of 400 million rand to Isisam Bane Pty Limited in 2008. There were also prepayments that were made to Likth in 2008 for equipment that need to be purchased in one of their coal mines. This amount was recovered over 12 consecutive installments starting in March 2008. Rand Mines also benefited from some prepayments. Actually, this wasn't a prepayment, it was a loan that was made to them. And this was recoverable over a 20-year period. And that only ended in 31 December 2013. And it was not only that was the first loan, there was another loan that was then made subsequently to that, and that has now been paid up as well to Rand Mines. These are specific prepayments that we've made. But in addition to that, coming back to the question or the comment that was made by the chairman, investment in cost-plus mines. And these are the cost-plus mines that we have entered into and have long-term contracts, and these stretch over 40 years. Currently amount to about 38 billion rand. And the beneficiaries of those are obviously the big four mining houses: Anglo, Exxaro, BHP, South 32.
Explain that is
Yeah, I think basically the capital expenditure that are required by these mines obviously the bill for that is footed by Eskom. So we basically make an upfront payment to them in terms of the capital requirements for those mines, and then they obviously take that money and invest in those mines associated with assets that are then required to produce the coal from those mines. So they buy yellow equipment like things to excavate the coal, transport the coal, conveyor belts, and so on and so forth. So this is the nature of the payments that are made, which are basically the prepayments, and those are historic stuff. As late as October last year, I think Exaro has also requested a 1.8 billion rand prepayment for sinking a new shaft from Eskom. And again, that would be something that we would consider and then decide whether we want to actually make that investment into Exaro or not. So based on historic practice as well as the cost plus mines as well as current existing requests from the mining houses for these, let's call it, upfront payments or some sort of advance payments, it is common practice in this environment to do that. If we then turn now to the transaction in question associated with Teta Mining and Resources, let's first categorically state that we were not approached by Teta for this payment. So they didn't come to us and say, please prepay us this amount, and then we responded to that. As the chairman had said, there was a security of supply issue that was raised by operations as it relates to overcoming the winter challenge due to certain circumstances that Mr. Coker can probably expand on. As a result of that, one of the suppliers that were identified, and Teta was not the only one of the suppliers that was identified at that point in time to provide that coal. There were two people that we actually contracted with. Teta was one, and I think in SABC was the other that we contracted with to provide and meet the, I think it was 2 million tons of coal that was required at the time. And as the chairman had said, due to some of the issues some of the operational issues at the time in the mine, there was then the request for the prepayment that was made. In order for us to grant the prepayment, we then requested a 3% discount from Teta on the price of the coal, which had already been benchmarked by the operations guys in terms of being competitive, as well as the fact that at that point in time we were sitting on quite a significant cash balance, and obviously as a result of the fact that we borrow the money to be able to have that cash in our bank, we obviously have what we call a negative cost of carry. That is the difference between the amount at which we borrow versus the amount that we actually invest that money in. And that obviously, the lower the balance, the lower the cost of carry. And that obviously also added to the benefit associated with this prepayment. In order to ensure that we were not exposed, we requested and received adequate security from Teta Resources at the time. We are also pleased to announce that the duration of this prepayment could not extend beyond the winter period, because the underlying reason for us to actually require the coal was the winter challenge in the first place. So we insisted that the amounts actually be repaid within a period of 6 months, and we are pleased to say that the prepayment was actually honored and repaid by the 12th of August of this year. I think that's pretty much it that I'd like to say on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The next question was on the impact of the non-granting of the increase in the tariff by the court. Our reading and understanding of the judgment is that the judge in her judgment said she is concerned about the process that was followed, and that there were certain procedural flaws in arriving at the tariff increase by NERSA. And then the judge then went on to say that so the tariff that has been granted should continue to be in place. It is not being set aside. But NERSA must go back and review what it had done. That is essentially, in my layman's understanding of the judgment, that is essentially what was said. The judge said, I'm sending this thing back to NERSA, but I'm not changing the tariff that NERSA has determined in the past. But NERSA must go and reconsider what it has done and satisfy itself that what it has done is correct. But the tariff does not change. So then the ball was back in NERSA's court, and NERSA decided to appeal against the judgment. So until that is done, the tariff stands until we get further clarification from NERSA. From where we stand, Chair, we are not overly concerned about this matter, and we think that it will be resolved in due course. The next question was about what we are going to do about municipal debt. Chair, you'll remember that in that fateful Wednesday, I don't want to call it the Black Wednesday, maybe I should call it the White Wednesday, when I had just been 5 days in the job. One of the things that I said, and I was at pains to explain that I'm saying it without mandate, was prepayment, and for which we were severely criticized. But we still stand by that. Now I have a mandate from management to talk about it. That time I didn't. Our idea is that the municipalities that have arrears, we should enter into an agreement with them as Eskom for us to step in and install prepaid meters. That will ensure that the debt stops increasing, at least. So it will then leave us with historical debt, but debt will not increase going forward. And in collecting the prepaid electricity, we will then sign a check every month to the municipality for the portion that they were entitled to had they been collecting. So we act as their agents. There are several municipalities and provinces that have said they like the idea. And in fact, we are just about to start a pilot project in one of the municipalities in the Eastern Cape. The province of the Free State has also said that they like the idea and they would like us to come and help municipalities by installing prepaid meters. But the municipality does not lose their revenue, because at the end of the month, from whatever we have calculated, we can calculate which portion of that money was due to the municipality and we give it to them in arrears. And that is our plan going forward with the municipality. Long-term, Chair, our feeling is that South Africa should really move to prepaid electricity. That will eliminate this issue of debt rising up to 12 billion, because then people will be able to use electricity that they have already paid for. We think that it works very well in the communications industry with prepaid cellular phones, where there are no costs of having to bill people, but people can buy prepaid vouchers and put into their houses. We also have a policy, I think honorable member from the EFF meant indigent, not indigenous. But the indigent are indigenous as well, so you are not entirely wrong. Strictly speaking, the majority of the indigent people also happen to be the indigenous people, so I did not have a quibble with a mistake or with what you said. But there is a policy to provide a certain amount of electricity to indigent households. And we think that that could be managed under prepaid system by giving them vouchers for electricity that can be used for free electricity. There are indigent households that are entitled to free certain amounts of electricity that would become free electricity every month. There are municipalities that practice that, and we think that under a system that we are proposing, it would still be possible to cater for those households. The next question, Chair, was on the increase in the capital spend for Irregular. I have to mention here, Chair, that the contract at Irregular was on, what's the word again?
Immeasurable.
Yes, immeasurable. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Honorable Singh is astute. It was remeasurable. So Remeasurable contract means that people are going to dig a tunnel under a mountain at an angle, and they don't know what they're going to come across. So they do their initial estimates. But nobody can hold them to the initial estimates when they come back and say, the conditions, the actual material conditions under the mountain would require additional expense. So I don't know where the amount of 8 billion comes from, and I don't know what the role of the 8 billion that I think Honorable Mazzoni and Carte Blanche talked about in a remeasurable contract. It actually doesn't make sense. The cost of Ngula is 29 billion. Carte Blanche mentioned that the cost of Ngula is going to be 36 billion when Ngula is finished in 2017, and then went on to make a spectacular remark that says, and it is unlikely that Eskom will finish Ngula by 2017. Well, since Carte Blanche made that spectacular, and this is also after they had accused me, amongst others, of lying, when we said that we were generating 1,000 megawatts of electricity. No, Mr. Masango, of lying when we said that we were generating 1,000 megawatts of electricity when the president was there. They then made the spectacular remark that it is not possible that Eskom will meet that deadline. Well, since Carte Blanche made that spectacular statement, 2 of the Ngula units are now in commercial operation, 3 units are in commercial operation, and the unit that is not in commercial operation, we are able to account fully for it, why it is not in commercial operation and when we will bring it back. Our interest in the matter, Chair, is progress. It would appear that there are some in our country that have a hatred for progress. Because when progress is made, people say it's not possible, the skeptics, but perhaps we do need them in a democracy. There was also a question that about the assurance being given to Treasury. I think the question was, did we in fact deliver the documents to Treasury? And I can confirm that the documents were delivered to Treasury. They have been signed for by somebody at the Treasury as received. And in fact, this morning, the CFO wrote a letter to Mr. Kenneth Brown to ask him if there is anything that is outstanding. We have been ready with this information, Chair. But Mr. Brown, on his letter of the 12th of April, said, kindly table the report before the Eskom board and submit the required information on or before 30 April. Our understanding of that instruction from the National Treasury was that we should not give them the information unless we can also show that it had been tabled before our board. And our board has not, the information is ready. It was ready. Yesterday we gave it to them at the instruction of the minister, because we said to the minister, but we're supposed to wait for the board to consider the information. In fact, we were shocked and perplexed to read in the Sunday Times that we are not cooperating. We were cooperating, Chair. There was request for information in July 2015, which we provided. There was request for information in September 2015, which we provided. In September 2015, the request for information included payments and invoices, which we provided at the time. There was a request for information, I think in October or November, which we provided before the end of November. There was a further request, then there was a report. Now, we do not think that this is a final report that was done by the 12th of April. And when that report was finalized, it was handed over, and they said, please answer to the following things, and please supply these additional information, but this time, make sure that your board sees it before you bring it to us. And then we were shocked and perplexed that it was in the Sunday Times. Our understanding was that after it has been considered by the board, it will be sent to the National Treasury. There was no attempt on our part not to comply with the requirements from the National Treasury. In fact, if the Treasury had called us to come and do a warning statement, we would have gone.
And also, Madam Chair, just to add to Mr. Molefe's responses, in preparation for the board meeting that's planned for September, the documents that were submitted to National Treasury yesterday had served at a procurement subcommittee of the board in August. So we were readying ourselves to actually comply with this requirement of the National Treasury.
Chair, and then there was a question that said Mr. Brown has called me a liar, and what is my response to that? Well, I've been called worse things, so I think it comes with the job. I'm okay with it, but I know my conscience is clear that I have not lied, and that we had our best intentions to comply with the National Treasury. Our conduct in this matter, which we can show and prove, and we've got documents to that effect, is not the conduct of people that were refusing to comply with the National Treasury. In fact, the reason the documents that were outstanding was because we wanted to comply to the T and make sure that we have been to the board, and the board was going to meet during September. That is all.
Chairperson, I think it's important for the country to note that something very strange has happened. We are under TPE. We have a shareholder minister. We have a DG. Why is National Treasury demanding things directly from us? If we do anything wrong, there is our shareholder minister. They should go to her and say, your institution is misbehaving. Why is this eagerness to publicize everything, to cast aspersions? You are casting aspersions on the minister in DPE, even more than us, because it means she is failing.
Chair, in addition to that, the National Treasury issued treasury instructions that say that any deviations from contracts have to be approved by the National Treasury, applicable from the 1st of July. Now, from a governance point of view, we had issues, but then we're just employees. We have to comply with what the Treasury says. Any deviations from existing contracts must be approved by the National Treasury. And this was effective 1st of July. One of the first deviations that we asked for Treasury approval for was in fact Korenfontein mine that supplies Komati. Korenfontein mine is owned by Teta, which is owned by the Guptas. And the Treasury has approved the Teta deviation, which goes back to my point. Other than the fact that it is Teta, there is in fact no sound reason that anybody could have given why we shouldn't do business with them. The Treasury itself approved a deviation for Korenfontein mine on the 17th of August. Perhaps the Guptas have also captured the Treasury. I don't know.
It's war.
Just stating cold, dispassionate facts. Then there was a question about IPP deals, Chair. We have been very careful about IPP deals because we would like to understand the cost structure. Because one day, Chair, you will call us and explain why we signed on documents. if a deal lands on my table, or on anybody's table at Eskom, and it is about buying electricity at 5,000 rand per megawatt hour, I have to really understand it. Because one day, this committee or another commission of inquiry or a judge or an advocate will ask me why I signed. And so what we have asked for from the Department of Energy and the IPP office is we would really like to understand how this thing works in terms of what we're trying to do. That's all. We are not trying to change policy. We will follow government's policy, but I cannot come back to this committee and say I signed this deal because it was policy and I was just following policy. I think I would be hauled before the courts. If I'm going to go to prison, Chair, I would like to understand why I'm going to go to prison. And if I sign something, it has to be in such a way that it will be possible for me to defend my action. And when I'm not sure about how I'm going to defend myself, I would rather that we delay the signing and just somebody must draw pictures for me so that I can understand. At the moment, we don't understand.
Chairperson, the fact is that when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, renewables become marginal to the stability of electricity supply in the country. With the output from the renewables, it means Eskom has got to reduce its baseload production from its generation fleet. And yet, you cannot ramp up these huge coal-fired power stations in a matter of an hour or 2 hours. When the sun sets and the load suddenly drops, what happens? You will have load shedding. So there are many issues related to the use of renewables and the expenditures involved. We were trying to point these things out, but we are being labeled as not applying policy, not adhering to what government does. But government also needs to be shown the facts. Needs to be told by the experts that the consequences of this policy are going to be X and Y.
Chair, there was a question about the notice period for nuclear and gazetting. Safe to say that that concern has been remedied because the notice period has been extended because that there were concerns from the public that the period has not been enough for taspent. I don't know if you want to talk about it in more detail, but the notice period has been extended and that should not be a problem.
Sorry, Mr. Mulifi, can you speed up the response because we are running out of time? Can you please do that for us?
Chair, the issue of the suspensions at Quebec. Firstly, a drone was found at or near Quebec. And on that day, the drone was found. It was retrieved by our people from security. The matter was reported to the police. And then later on in the day, somebody came and said, "Aish, I've lost a drone. Where's my drone? It must have been flying around here." And the head of security at Quebec gave it back to him. Now, I asked him later in the evening, why did you give the drone to the person? Against the advice of, because before he did, he sent a letter to, because the matter was reported to state security, because Quebec is a national key point. And I asked him in the evening, why did you give the drone back? Did the drone have a camera? He says, yes, the drone had a camera, but the owner said the camera doesn't work. And then I said, look, I mean, there's nothing I can say. You've just compromised all of us. And Mr. Koko then decided to suspend the security manager and do an investigation. I believe that the state security went and retrieved the drone and I don't know what they found, because it was like 12 hours later, and that is an investigation that is ongoing. There were violations of several laws, actually: civil aviation, national key point, and so on and so forth. And our own security personnel just handed back the drone. That is what we were concerned about. On the other matter, there was information that we considered to be proprietary that was shared with the entire staff at Quebec, and subsequently even emailed to a company in America called Westinghouse, and we were concerned about the sharing of sensitive information from Quebec, and the station manager did not deny that had happened. In fact, he said he doesn't see anything wrong with it, and that is why then that is that particular suspension. But also, the drone and the sharing of information at the same time, I think, puts us at risk. We are, however, happy to report, Chair, that we do not think that the nuclear safety at Quebec has been compromised by these developments, and that the matters are under control. We do have an acting station manager. His name is Velapin Tuli, a seasoned nuclear engineer who actually has spent about 2 years at the World Association of Nuclear Organizations in Atlanta, and in whom we have confidence. We do not think that nuclear safety has been compromised, but we were very quick to take action with these developments. The miraculous energy supply was answered. The bonuses answered. The strike. The strike has been resolved. We have signed an agreement with NUM and Solidarity. The matter was at the CCMA, and the union that was on strike was NUM, and they have called off the strike. So at the moment, as I speak, there is no strike at Eskom. All the employees are on duty and working. The outstanding signature is from NUMSA, and the last time they said that they would like to consider the agreement before they sign it. But in terms of the rules, we are perfectly entitled to implement it because it has been signed by the majority of the unions, which is NUM and Solidarity. The increase in staff complements, we were pains to point out that increase was as a result of the hiring of 1,300 artisans. So we are not, that is the kind of increase that we would like to see, because it gives young people an opportunity to come in at Eskom as trainee artisans and artisans. And I do not think that even when we are doing cost cutting, that we should stop our artisans program, because it gives young people an opportunity to come and work and grow in Eskom and understand what we're doing and become professionals. Chair, I do not think that we are in a position to comment about the scramble for the control of state enterprises. It is something that we read about in opinion pieces in the newspapers, but from where we sit, we are not sure what that is about. Perhaps because we are the subject of that, we are not in a position to comment. I will ask Mr. Monges Ntsokolo to talk about the illegal connections. There was a question about illegal connections.
Chair, if I understand, the question was about the collaboration between Eskom and the municipalities, and I'm happy to say that we actually work very closely with them. The nature of the network is that we are interconnected anyway, physically, in terms of the wires, and if those illegal connections are left, they compromise the quality of the supply and also interrupt legal customers that are legally connected. So it is our duty to actually remove them and make sure that the network is safe. One of the longer solutions we're trying to implement is, of course, universal access, to legalize those connections and make sure that those connections are legal customers. And as the Chief Executive have said, we've got an aspiration to achieve universal access by the turn of the century. And hopefully the pressure of illegal connections will go away.
Sorry. 10 of the decade, not the century. 10 of the century.
Are all questions responded to now? If all the questions are responded to, then we will look for follow-up questions, and perhaps if there are any new questions. Honorable Stand? Oh, she's not here. Mr. Kwangwa?
Yes, ma'am.
After Mr. Kwangwa, it's Mr. C, Honorable Singh, Honorable Mainir, Honorable Khawula, Honorable Zukile Luyenge, and Honorable Mazongi. Honorable Kwang.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Indeed, I think the scramble for the control of state-owned enterprises is a political question that maybe should be answered by the government that put you there, Honorable CEO. But the issue, the fundamental principle, and what the people of South Africa are concerned about, which maybe you can answer, and maybe the ruling party can also answer at some point, is that there seems to be... No, I'm not expecting you to answer. The ruling party is probably watching at home or at their offices, so I expect them to answer at some point. You see, people are concerned about what is become an apparent bias, whether conscious or unconscious, in favor of the Guptas. And that undermines an important principle in our society, and a principle of providing equality of opportunity. That's what they are fighting about. It's impossible that a family, for instance, and even family members of the president can be jack of all trades and masters of everything. That's what concerns the people of South Africa. It doesn't matter whether you're in the media or elsewhere, it's a problem. Now, I think from your perspective, the answer would be, I think you've answered that you have not been captured. But I think maybe the answer at some point should address whether there was equality of opportunity in terms of how you considered them for this particular business. You see what I'm saying? That's what we need to address. I want to come back to the issue where you talked about the witchcraft and so on and so forth. I'm not a witch, nor am I a wizard. But the issue is, when, when I was busy campaigning in the rural parts of the Eastern Cape, what I discovered is that there are many communities, villages, where people were complaining that the free basic electricity units, the 50 units, are used the same way that parties that are governing use food parcels. In one of the villages, for instance, they said, we are not getting free basic electricity units here. And in the village next door, they were getting free basic, and they're all poor, right? And when you try to establish what are the causes of that, you don't get a clear answer. Now the question is, who is responsible for that? Is it Eskom or is it the municipalities themselves? If it's the municipalities themselves, how can we overcome that so that they don't become part of this the patronage system that parties use to actually get votes? Because in some areas, it was the villages that were supporting the councillor there that without a doubt got the 50. That was the impression that the villagers had, whether it was true or not, but it was the impression and the perception that they had at the time. So is there no way that Eskom, for instance, can exercise more control over that so that it is standardized and it's done properly? There's another issue, Chairperson, where remember I complimented you and the leadership of Eskom on this matter. When we raised it, we said some of the smaller suppliers, the independent power producers, especially in the renewable energies, we said they needed to be given more opportunity to be connected to the grid and so on, because the focus was more on bigger wind farms. And later on, they came back to me and said, no, we were given an opportunity, we're connected to the grid, but now even the private sector in this instance has to be honest. They also have a responsibility towards our socio-economic development needs. Why am I saying that? Immediately after they were connected, and then I spoke with IDC, I said, what are the challenges? They are complaining about some of the conditions that you've put in the loans, right? The loan agreements. And they said, no, they want money as if they are getting it from a commercial bank. They don't want any socio-economic development objectives attached to the loans. That can't be allowed. Especially when you consider that some of these smaller wind farms, some of the IPPs, operate in the most rural parts of the country. They want to make money, smile all the way to the bank, and while they are living in abject poverty, while the people in those areas, we can't allow that. I think it's one of the issues that, as a nation, we must address. It's not even a matter of Eskom, for an example. I know it's a policy issue with the Department of Energy and Economic Development that they need to address and make sure that we work on it. The other issue that maybe you did not respond to is the issue of targets, which was asked by Chairperson. I also wanted to ask this very same question, where you look at your procurement spend with black youth-owned suppliers. For instance, on page 9, you set a certain target and you couldn't achieve it. And that goes, it's actually the same with the suppliers of owned black people with disabilities and so on. Overall, there seems to be a number of challenges that you didn't highlight about why you could not achieve those targets. Lastly, gentlemen and ladies, I think you're on the right track. Do not lose heart. We are not here to discourage you. We appreciate the good that you have done and that you continue to do, but we have a role as well as MPs to play an oversight role, but to be fair in dealing with you so that we can have a frank discussion about some of the challenges that we have as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I know time is against us. I'm going to be brief. I just want to go back, CEO, to this remeasurable contracts. And, you know, another word for that is variation orders. And I've had a lot of experience with variation orders, where a tender that's granted for 5 million ends up being 50 million because of variation orders. Now, what I'd like to know is it's quite easy for an engineering firm to come along and say we don't know what's happening underground. But are there checks and balances from your engineers, your team of experts? Do you have a team of experts to verify whether or not this variation that is being requested by the contractor are legitimate? So that's one. Secondly, Chairperson, I can't understand where you've got a contract with an IPP, maybe before your time, that you said you pay for diesel even if you do not use it. That sounds quite bizarre. I'd like to enter into that kind of contract where, you know, you pay me for something that I don't supply you. So if we can just expand on that. And a little bit on the phantom shares. I mean, phantom of the opera, it's a phantom, it's a dream, but it's written in your financial statement. So if you can just unpack that. And lastly, I cannot recall, Chair, if the 23 billion rand equity that was put in last year had any terms and conditions attached to it. And if they were, have those been met by Eskom? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will also be brief. It's remarkable to me that the Group Chief Executive Officer claims that there's no evidence against the Guptas, when on National Treasury's version, it is precisely him who is failing to cooperate and, in fact, preventing and blocking an investigation which may surface that kind of evidence against the Guptas. And so I want to be clear. Is it your view that the National Treasury's version that you have failed to cooperate and have indeed undermined and blocked their review false? And are you saying that the Minister of Finance and the Chief Procurement Officer are lying? Yes or no? That's the first question. The second question relates to the contents of the report dated the 12th of April 2016, which you traversed in your reply. Do you share the view held by Teta Resources and Exploration in their papers where they threaten to interdict the publication of the report, and where they say that the report, and I quote, relies on inaccurate and ill-advised facts, assumptions, and recommendations. And that, I quote again, the report is flawed and to a very large extent relies on defective and incorrect information. Do you share Teta Exploration and Resources view about the contents of the report furnished to you by National Treasury? And can you explain, if there was no wrongdoing, and if Teta Exploration and Resources has nothing to hide, why are they threatening to interdict National Treasury from publishing their report on alleged corruption in respect of coal contracts at Eskom?
Honorable Gaula.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I note the response of the CEO, eloquently so, legally so, but I want to further ask the question, because the reality is that we're moving from a contextual point of view. Your predecessor himself has been alleged to have given preferential treatment to the Guptas. He has been alleged to have been pressured to make sure that he leaned towards the Guptas, and hence the 43 million contract that was given to the Guptas' new age. And the point that we're making is that you yourself have not dispelled the fact that you are friends with Guptas. And at some point, you were touted, you are also close to the President Jacob Zuma. And I'm saying that becomes the context.
Who is not close?
And that becomes the context because the acquisition of contracts by Teta, which is a company owned by Guptas and the son of the President Jacob Zuma. Now, if that is the case, does it then make sense for you to preside over a state-owned enterprise that gives business to a company that you have close relations to? Because remember, your defense of Guptas, it moves from the point that you are related with them and you did not deny the fact that you are friends with Guptas. So I'm raising this thing so that you get the context as to why the public feels strongly that you have been bending backwards. And in fact, Eskom, because I'm raising this point from even your predecessors, so Eskom has been captured as a monopoly of Guptas in the series of businesses. In fact, there was a time where Guptas even got business with Eskom without even getting the full, without even meeting the full requirements. They did not have a license for water and sanitation, but they still got the contract. And the other question that I want to ask, in fact, moving towards the targets, it is good for companies, for employment equity purposes, to say that we've met our target. I know that you had 12% target, and now you got 19. Perhaps we should clap hands. But the question is whether the ordinary people, because it's easy to put people and say that you have met target, but whether that target translates to the ordinary people. So I guess the question I'm asking you is that the companies that you subcontract, and do you get the feel that the communities in which they are doing business with are actually benefiting directly from those targets? Or is it just a group of individuals that get business and Telkom is happy with meeting the targets? The last one, the issue of the disruptions that you have mentioned, isn't it an indication the reason why people are connecting illegally? Isn't it a manifestation that there's probably, it's the delay that you have pointed out that you have made your 100% in other provinces, and as a result of that delay, people be out of impatiently, and they are showing that this thing could even be done easily, but they are just doing it illegal. I'm just asking, because the reality is that everyone needs to have access to electricity, as you have said. But perhaps the delay of Eskom to ensure that it electrifies all houses is exactly the reason why you are having so much illegal connections in the main, in the Eastern Cape. Thank you very much.
Sluyeng and then you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The first one, Chair, maybe it's they've forgotten to respond to one on the one that relates to retention strategy. Then the follow-up question is the government policy requires you to pay service providers within 30 days. Do you follow that? Because with the type of work that you do when you use service providers, there mustn't be cries for people who are being paid for services already rendered. And then on the 75% local content utilization, also as the pronouncement of the President in the last two speeches, do you really assist the local service providers in order to have the necessary capacity to be your service providers? And then lastly, do you have a service standard that you have? How do you measure the rendering of your services if you don't have a service standard? What constitutes a rendered service? Thank you.
Honorable Mazon.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, although talk of witchcraft, I wish the only witchcraft that we could have was to have this pillar removed, because I'd like to be able to look at the board and the members of Eskom face on. Chair, a few issues. Just with regards to the coal, because I find this very confusing. Chair, a leaked Treasury report indicated that the South African Bureau of Standards collected samples of the Brakfontein coal on the 6th of September. This was the very day after the Teta contract was reinstated with Eskom. The results of that came back on the 18th of September and showed that the coal was hopelessly non-compliant. So why is there this insistence that it's witchcraft and all sorts of nonsense that this coal is compliant? Because we now have the SABC results saying that the coal is not compliant. And there are also minutes from Eskom's technical team where they stated that they have concerns with the quality of coal. So it's not just things that we're picking up out of nowhere. These are actual facts. So it's nothing about black magic. This is cold, hard facts. Chairperson, then, on the issue of bonuses, I would like to paraphrase, to put this to Eskom's board. It is my job to come to Parliament and to come to committee and to come to plenary sittings. I don't get a bonus for coming to Parliament and coming to committee. It is your job as Eskom to keep the lights on and to operate in a profitable way. You should not earn a bonus for doing your job. Chairperson, openly and honestly, what I can tell without any shadow of a doubt is that there has been a complete and utter breakdown in the relationship between Eskom, the Department of Public Enterprises and Treasury. The three are not talking to each other, and it's quite evident from what the CEO just said that there is nothing short of an out-and-out war between these organizations, which I find very disturbing. But, Chairperson, I think there's a question that is on the minds of all South Africans and on the minds of many people sitting here. And it's one that's actually very easily answered, and I think will go a long way to putting our minds at ease. The elephant in the room here is the Gupta family and their relationship with Eskom, and more importantly, their relationship with members of the board. And I think it's therefore fitting that we ask a direct question to the chair of the board and to the CEO, whether they have a close relationship with the Gupta family, whether they meet with the Gupta family regularly or at all, and thirdly, whether or not before their appointments they were met with the Guptas and any deals, possible deals, or their appointments to Eskom were discussed with the Gupta family. Thank you.
My last question, or my concern, I just wanted to check, Chairperson of the board, when you received the letter from the Treasury in April, was there no board meeting that was scheduled between April and September? Are you taking that long? Is your schedule that long? You don't meet, if you meet in April or if you meet in March as a board, then after that you meet in September. Because I take it, if the Treasury said to you, you must first conduct, or you must first present to the board. Maybe they thought that the board will sit in the next 2 or one month. Is your schedule that much separated? Have that gap in between that you could not meet between April and August or between April and September? Thank you. What?
Is it not possible to call a special board meeting to attend to urgent business? That's a question. I think it's a valid question.
I'll give over to Eskom to respond to. This is our last, fortunately, our last round of questions, and we cannot allow other questions after the response. We will meet next week. Oh, yes.
Chairperson, my nephew proposed me for the Eskom board and for the Transnet board. The DPE decided I had to come to Eskom. I had nothing to do with the Guptas or with anybody else in terms of coming to the board of Eskom. Now, to have being publicly impugned as if one is a lekkie, I don't need to be a lekkie. I've served this country with distinction. I was at Kodesa. I was in the first government of national unity under President Mandela and Mbeki. President Mbeki sent me to Japan. I got an honor, an award from the Japanese emperor for the excellent work I'd done there, the cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun, which is hardly given to anybody who is not Japanese. I've served this country, so I reject with total contempt this impunity about my honor and my integrity.
Chair, the question of my friendship with the Guptas arises out of a question that I was asked by Mr. John Robbie on radio. In the middle of an interview, he says to me, "Do you know the Guptas?" I said, "Yes, I know them." "So when did you meet them, and what kind of people are they?" I said, "I've met them. Those guys have been in South Africa for a while. I've met them. And actually, when I look at them, I don't see anything wrong with them. They're nice people. They're okay. Just like I think Mr. Singh of Mr. Mainir are nice people because I've met them during the course of this meeting and in the context of this meeting. But that does not mean they have captured me." Maybe I'm making a mistake about you, Mr. Mainir. But you know, the irony of it all, after what I had answered John Robbie on 702, was that actually I could remember early in, I can't remember when, around 2008, the Guptas used to own Pinnacle Point, which is a golf course and a estate in Mossel Bay. And the MTN shootout was hosted at Pinnacle Point by them, and not MTN, and actually at the time it was SuperSport. And one of the people that played in that golf course of the Guptas was Mr. John Robbie. I saw him there. He played at the MTN shootout. He must have met them because they were there. And I don't know what he thought about what kind of people they are when he met them in the context of that golf tournament. So I think it was very unfair that if you get asked the question, have you met somebody? I don't know what people expect me to have said. Whether I should have said, I have never met them. and I hate them. And in fact, tomorrow I'm disconnecting the electricity. I think everybody would be happy with me. I think everybody's. Unfortunately, my job is not like that. There are a lot of people who are suppliers. There are a lot of people who say that they are very close friends with me, and they can organize meetings with me on behalf of other people. I hear that all the time. There are people who claim to be very, very close to me that I can hardly remember. The fact that I know the Guptas and I have met them, I've shook their hands, and I've had a conversation with them, does not make me corrupt. I'm sorry. We need more substance than that to prove that I'm captured or corrupt. And I would contest that I am captured or corrupt. But I will not deny that I know them. Just like I know a lot of South Africans. I've met Mr. Jonathan Oppenheimer, and he's a nice fellow. I've also met Mr. Rupert. He's a very, very nice fellow. Mr. Rupert has a farm in Stellenbosch. He invited me over and showed me a river.
Good wine to boot.
Exactly. Yeah. And showed me a river and said, there is water that's flowing in this river. We can install a machine and we'll put 2 megawatts into the grid. And I said, that's a good idea. I referred the matter to Mr. Ndo. I don't know what happened to it. He must still give account to me. But does that mean I'm corrupt? No. He's a South African trying to help with our situation. And if he calls me again, I will go and see him. I mustn't drink the wine. Chair, on the local content utilization, I don't know, Anwaj can talk about that, as well as, Anwaj can talk about local content.
Yes, Madam Chair. We have, as quite correctly pointed out, not met some of our targets as it relates to the socio-economic aspects of the compact. We have certainly put in place strategies in the current year to ensure that we actually meet those targets. And obviously the targets in the current year have, I would say, been impacted by the new codes that have been promulgated. And we are alive to that, and our plans actually speak to that. So I am confident that when we hear next year to account to the committee in terms of your oversight role, that we'll be talking to you on a much better footing and performance as it relates to the localization, social, and the supply development initiatives that we've got in place, as well as the BEE elements associated with black women-owned businesses, black youth-owned businesses, and the like.
And then Mr. Mazoni says the SABS says the coal war. Ms. Mazoni says the SABS says coal was not compliant. Machela or Mr. Koko?
Yeah, Chair, you will recall that, or it's common information now that we suspended 2 coal laboratories and 4 for employees on the 31st of August 2015. And then we suspended the Teta supply contract because we could not verify that the coal supplied to us was not proper or within specifications. We suspended them until the 6th and lifted the suspension on the 6th after the results from SABS dated the 31st of August that shows everything is okay. We retained SABS from then to consistently send test the coal piles. Now, the National Treasury has written to us and says we've picked up these samples from SABS that were not compliant. Now, the way it works, and this is the frustration, and that's how we feel let down. We have different piles
which we test. And in terms of and every pile has got a unique identity number. We take the sample, attach the identity number, we take it to the laboratory, we test it, and if it's in spec, we load it. If it's not in spec, we reject it. That's what the contracts say. It's not uncommon to find stockpiles that do not comply. The contract says when they do not comply, you reject it. Now, it's important that we had in the month of September 8 stockpiles that were not in specifications, that we rejected, that National Treasury say that you refer to as totally not compliant. It's not correct. Now, what we have done, every invoice has got a stockpile number to it. You will not find in the invoice that Eskom paid a unique number of a stockpile that failed. You won't do that. We have given National Treasury yesterday, as part of the letter the Group Chief Executive has sent to them, the list of stockpile that we know were not in specification. And we have shown that you will not find all those stockpiles that were not in compliant in any of the invoices that we have paid. So it is not correct that based on only 8 stockpiles to conclude that the coal in the dark was hopeless.
Just to add to Machila's response is that we've also got internal audit to verify the fact that the coal that was indeed out of specification was not used, and secondly was not paid for.
Sorry. There was an issue here about black suppliers in terms of renewables not being able to meet financial
Now, Germany, to promote environmental control, protect the environment, instituted a feed-in tariff that helped the OEMs and anyone who wanted to get involved in the industry to get in on affordable terms because of this subsidy, which was the feed-in tariff. It was an environmental subsidy. In South Africa, they chose to auction through the bid windows. There is no feed-in tariff in this country. I was talking to a black supplier who says, but we have killed us. I said, we didn't. It's DOE and its policies. So if you want to correct this and allow the emerging new actors in the renewables, change government policy, put in a feed tariff, then you will see a lot of black suppliers in the industry.
Chair, Honorable Mazzoni insists that she would like to be paid a bonus. I think the matter can be taken up with Parliament. But the employment what do they call conditions of employment at Eskom are what they are, and if Parliament is not happy with them, we can change them, or the board or the department or the shareholder can change them. But that is what they are. The fact that part of the employment conditions at Eskom involve the payment of a bonus, I do not think is corruption. And the IPP, it's DDISA. Yeah, it's DDISA. Huh?
No. Why do you do that for?
DEDISA. It's called the name. It's the name of the IPP. DDISA. I think Mr. Koko must talk about them.
Yeah. It's DDISA and Avon, and.
The question that was asked deals with DOE peakers. There's 2 plants, IPPs, called Avon and DDISA, total about 1,000 megawatts. They run on diesel at present, so it's gas turbines running on diesel. As the signatory to the power purchase agreement, Eskom makes two payments to them. One is an energy payment, so when they run, we pay them for the energy they produce at a certain rate. The other one is a capacity payment. That capacity payment is what the Group Chief Executive is referring. So you pay them a fixed amount of money every month for being available, even when they don't run. So it's sort of a retainer, but if they're not available, then we reduce that payment.
Our intention is that we will not run diesel, and we will pay them for not running. And that cost gets passed to the South Africans, and that doesn't make sense.
Finally, Chair, when Mr. Mainir walked in, he came to me and shook my hand. Now I'm worried somebody's going to start spreading a rumor that I'm going to become a DA shadow finance minister. Because somebody probably took a picture of me shaking hands with Mr. Mainir.
Chair, there was a question about the engineering experts. You know, when you do these variations, do you have your own team instead of that? And then the other one you did not answer was a 23 billion rand equity terms and conditions.
On the verification of the claims in terms of the contract, I think Mr. Abraham Masango can talk about it, but those claims are independently verified before we pay. But Abraham can talk about it.
Yes, Chair. We've got independent engineers and cost engineers that are doing the check and balances on all our projects. In actual fact, at the beginning of Ingula, we've commissioned Hill International and VGB at the start to give us a report in terms of their estimation of the business case of Ingula. So those engineers are there on a continuous basis. It's a combination of our own as well as the expert trades who are doing the check and balances for us.
And then, Chair, as far as we're concerned, we have met all the conditions for the 23 billion equity injection. There is a condition in which there was a variation, which is that we had to have a capital program of, I think, 268, which we reduced and subsequently increased again. It was a small variation of what one of the conditions was. But for the variation of that condition, we had to provide reasons, which we have submitted to the National Treasury. I'm stating this because there is a risk that maybe somebody will say, yes, but you varied the capital program in terms of the conditions. We have varied it, but we have also provided reasons. And as far as we are concerned, other than that, all the conditions for the equity injection have been met.
The targets, the question on targets
and
the okay.
Well, first of all, I must say, in terms of media houses that are employed by Eskom Communications, Mr. Chose can speak to that. When I came to Eskom, I inquired about the AN7 or that deal, or TNA, that one, and I was told that there were about 6 or 7 other media houses that got the contracts. So it wasn't an exceptional thing. I don't know why the media got the idea that this was just targeted to TNA, you know. Now, in terms of the emerging suppliers, I sent a letter to Treasury saying we wanted a variation or an exemption from the PFMA to be able to fund and support this black group that's going to supply fabric for our power stations, filter fabrics. And the answer I got was that that question will still have to be considered. So to promote black suppliers, we need exemption in terms of the PFMA laws, because the conditions are not the same. You cannot get the same guarantee from a start-up. So you as legislators, please look at these issues, because they're blocking the advancement of black people in this country. Even when I was chairperson of Land Bank, I pleaded. I said, you cannot expect an imaging farmer to satisfy the credit committee's requirements completely like a huge, big, white conglomerate in commercial farming. But they have exactly the same rules, and they are blocking the emergence of many black farmers. This thing applies right across. And as legislators, please study it and look at it.
Chair, just quickly, and there's about the 53 basic electricity units. I remember I asked, I was trying to say, is there a better way of managing it? No, that's not a new question. It wasn't answered. I was trying to find out whether is there a better way of managing the current system, where they were saying, no, it's Eskom, it's municipalities rather that deal with it. The problem I have, just as a parting shot, is that when there is no, in those villages, when they don't have electricity at night, right, they think it's witchcraft. And I turn around and say it's actually the ANC. So you need to answer the question.
Are all the questions answered now?
There are 300,000 rural communities, rural households, where the commercial grid has not reached. Solar panels are being provided for those families. It's not as if we are not doing anything about those who are remotely placed.
Is your questions are not answered?
Chair, if you recall, I asked three questions. Briefly, they were whether, given National Treasury's version, it was your view that the Minister and the Chief Procurement Officer had lied, whether you, when it comes to the contents of the report, you concurred with Tegeta's view in their lawyer's letter that the report is flawed, and how you explain that if there was nothing wrong and if there's nothing to hide, why Tegeta have threatened to interdict the publication of the report by National Treasury.
Sorry, they were over the page, which I didn't.
And also the board meetings that was not answered. Okay.
Okay. By the way, since Sunday, the Minister of Finance has not said anything about this matter. So he could not have lied. And I have huge respect for the Minister of Finance. And I hold him in very high regard. I have had the opportunity of working with him in the Treasury. And he's a man of immense integrity. And I think he's the right person for the job that he's doing. And so we take very seriously requests for information and investigations from the National Treasury, which is why we have complied. As I said earlier, if Mr. Kenneth Brown says myself or Eskom have lied, that is his version. But one of the things that has happened since Sunday is that actually I have not personally spoken on the matter. There is nowhere where I am quoted as saying something. The thing is, what has happened in the media is that the statements that have been released by Eskom and Treasury and also by Eskom have been ascribed to Molefe. But they were not Molefe statements. I have not issued a statement, and the statements were issued by Eskom. I knew about the statements, but they were issued by Eskom. Perhaps it is difficult to divorce me from Eskom, but personally, since Sunday, I have actually not said anything about the Treasury. And I would never say that the Treasury is lying. Perhaps, maybe on the information that they have and their understanding of issues, they were made to believe that the situation is different to what it actually is. But I would never say that the National Treasury willfully lied. The National Treasury is not in the business of doing that. We have huge respect for the institution that the National Treasury is. I do not think that the National Treasury would willfully mislead South Africa. Nor do I think the same thing about the Minister of Finance, by the way, who I hold in very high regard. The illegal connections, I do not think it is due to the delay in universal access, because these illegal connections happen in areas that have been connected. It's just that in those areas that have been connected, there are people who build additional structures in earth and then connect these additional structures, or connect illegally directly onto the pole or onto the grid. And so I do not share the view that these connections are as a result of the delay in universal access. In fact, the areas that do not have access cannot connect illegally because there's nothing to connect to. The issue that the Guptas did not have a license for water is not true. There was a time when they did not have a license for water. But at the time when we contracted with them, and when I say we contracted with them, I'm using the royal we because this happened before I arrived at Eskom. But at the time when this contract was signed, the license for water was in place. And it is one of the clarifications that we had issued to the National Treasury yesterday, because that matter is in their draft report. So we gave them a copy of the water license and so on. And that is not to say that we are responsible for compliance with water licenses, but at the time when the contract with Eskom was signed, so maybe during the negotiations there was no water license, but at the time when the contract was signed, the water license was in place, and we have provided that information to the National Treasury yesterday. There was a question that I'm also friends with President Jacob Zuma. Well, I know President Jacob Zuma, and I've had meetings with him, and he's a very nice old man. He tells jokes and has a very interesting perspective on life, and is a very, Mr. Singh would agree. You've also met him, Mr. Singh.
I worked with him from 1993. We can tell you that.
Yeah, but you'll confirm what I'm saying, that is a... Would you confirm that he is a very nice person?
Not in public. Not in public. He will do that in some other time.
He will do that in some other time.
The mandate of the organization
I do
does not
have
allow
this,
him to do that.
It's actually the rules of the coalition.
Okay, the new rules.
No, but fortunately, I was not brought up with an inbuilt desire to hate people. I do not hate people, and even when I don't agree with them, I do not hate people. And so even when other people disagree with people, I find it difficult to involve myself in the hatred that follows. And I think that, yes, Mr. President, President Jacob Zuma is a very nice person, and we always talk about cattle and rural things and so on. He was telling me, one day he told me, that why is it that in the rural areas they can use the dung of a cow to beautify a home, but they can never use the dung of a human being?
Out of all.
I thought that was interesting anyway.
Could you please stick to the questions and answer the questions?
It's almost lunchtime. We don't talk about that.
Okay, Chair, I think that's all the questions.
Our questions are...
Chair, it appears that the CEO is now willfully zigzagging around answering three questions. The first is, does he share the view held by Teta that the report is flawed? Can he explain why, if there was no wrongdoing and there's nothing to hide, Teta have threatened to interdict the publication of the report? And he has also not, Chairperson, dealt with the whole question of the sequencing of board meetings. But what he has dealt with is his profound meetings with President Jacobson, where he seems to suggest that there are a whole range of issues on the agenda, but not load shedding.
No, there's no load shedding, by the
that's
way.
why I said let us stick to the question and answer the
apologies,
question.
Chair, the issue between Teta wanting to interdict National Treasury is a legal matter between Teta and National Treasury, which I'm not competent to comment about. And the option of an interdict is a remedy that is available in our law, and if they have received legal advice that they should interdict anything, well, it's allowed in our law. I do not have an opinion on that. It is a matter between Teta and the National Treasury. The opinion that I have is our response to the National Treasury, which we have provided. Thank you. And I'm not sure if I've left any other question now. The sequencing of board meetings. It's not from the 12th of April. Mr. Brown said on radio the other day that there is no 172-page report. But wait, here it is. This is a 172-page. No,
it's not for you.
This is a 172-page report that was provided to us on the 12th of April. Now, I must say that, and the request was to answer by the 30th of April, with the board having seen it. We immediately requested for an extension because we thought it was not possible for us to answer everything by the time and also put it through the board within 18 days. And initially the extension was to June. And we have been ready with the answers to the report since July. And since then, the matters have been discussed at the board subcommittee, which is a correct procedure. It must go to the board tender committee, which is chaired by Mr. Tembe Koza. And the issue is whether there was a board meeting since we finished responding and putting the documents together. And that is from July. And there hasn't been. The board meeting will be in September.
Chair, just with respect, my question about whether Eskom views the report in a similar light to Teta, and that is the report is flawed. Does Eskom view the report, which you've shown us, as flawed? Yes or no?
That is unfair. The National Treasury has not said this is their final report. The National Treasury has drafted a report and they've asked for our comments. And to the extent that we have provided comments and clarified certain things in the report, like, for example, the water license, that in fact at the time when we signed there was a water license, the National Treasury may or may not change their findings. So I think to say whether or not the report is flawed, we would have to wait for the final report. This is just a draft, which I think it was unfortunate that it was released to the Sunday Times for publication on Sunday, long before it has become anything that anybody can use as a finding. There are no findings in this report yet because they have asked us for comments and they have received our comments yesterday, which they were going to get at the end of September.
Hopefully all the questions are being answered. Let me take the opportunity in thanking the members of Parliament in their contribution on this presentation and Eskom for giving clarities on the presentation that they have given us, and also thank you for the presentation and to stick to our program, because when you divert our program, it makes our lives very difficult because we do not have time. We have few weeks to go to recess, and if we are not able to do our job as is expected of us, we might not get where we want to be. The meeting has not adjourned, but I want to release Eskom so that we deal with our minutes and our program, especially the program, because the program needs all of us as members. Thank you very much. I'm not going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, honorable members. I think this was a frank and fair discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
The media must ask questions outside. The media, they will stop.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.